My son traveled to Italy with his fiancée and her mother, leaving me at home to clean up the house. The next day I got 16 messages. Mom, what did you do with the cards? We can't buy our tickets back or purchase anything. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Janet, and at 64 years old, I thought I had learned to expect disappointment from my son Marcus. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened 3 weeks ago. I was standing in my kitchen, washing the breakfast dishes Marcus had left behind, when he waltzed in with that familiar look on his face. The one that meant he wanted something. Behind him followed Sophia, his fiancée of 8 months, perfectly manicured as always, and her mother Elena, who had never bothered to learn my name properly, always calling me Jane with that dismissive tone. Mom, we need to talk, Marcus said, not even helping me dry the dishes. At 32, my son still acted like a teenager who expected everything to be handed to him. I had raised him alone after his father walked out when Marcus was 7, working double shifts as a bookkeeper to give him every opportunity one never had. Sophia stepped forward, her smile as fake as her eyelashes. Janet, we have the most exciting news. We're going to Italy for our pre-wedding trip. 3 weeks in Rome, Florence, and Venice. Elena found this amazing villa rental. My heart sank. I knew what was coming next. It was always the same pattern with Marcus and now with Sophia pulling his strings. That sounds wonderful, I managed to say, though my voice probably gave away my resignation. When are you leaving? Elena finally spoke up, her voice dripping with entitlement. Tomorrow morning. The flights are booked, the villa is reserved, everything is set. She paused, examining her perfectly polished nails. We just need you to handle the financial arrangements. There it was. The punch to the gut I had been expecting but still hoped wouldn't come. Marcus avoided my eyes, focusing on his phone instead. It's just temporary, Mom. You know I'm between jobs right now, and the wedding expenses have been crazy. Sophia's parents are handling the ceremony costs, so this is really the least you could do. The least I could do. Those words echoed in my mind as I stood there, dish towel in hand, looking at the 3 people who saw me as nothing more than a walking ATM. I had already paid for Marcus's apartment deposit last month, covered his car insurance for the past year, and quietly funded his credit card payments more times than I could count. How much are we talking about? I asked quietly. Sophia's eyes lit up with excitement. Oh, it's not that much really. The flights were about $3,000 each, the villa is $8,000 for 3 weeks, and we figured maybe $5,000 for food and activities. So around $24,000 total. $24,000. My entire savings from working overtime for the past 2 years. Money I had set aside for my retirement, for the medical expenses I knew would come as I aged, for the small dreams I still harbored of traveling myself someday. And of course, Elena added with a wave of her hand, we'll need the credit cards for any additional expenses. You know how these things go. Shopping, spa days, maybe a cooking class or 2. I felt something inside me crack. Not break entirely, but develop a hairline fracture that would soon split wide open. When do you need an answer? I heard myself asking. Marcus finally looked at me directly. Mom, the flight leaves at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We need to transfer the money tonight and get the cards ready. He had the audacity to look slightly annoyed, as if I was being difficult by not immediately agreeing. I nodded slowly, my mind racing. I'll need to go to the bank first thing in the morning then. Sophia clapped her hands together like a delighted child. Oh Janet, you're the best. This is going to be such an amazing trip. Elena has been telling me about this little boutique in Florence that sells the most gorgeous leather handbags. As they chattered excitedly about their plans, making lists of restaurants and tourist attractions, I stood there invisible. Not once did anyone suggest I might want to join them. Not once did anyone ask if I had plans for the 3 weeks they'd be gone. I was simply the funding source, the problem solver, the woman who made their dreams possible while putting her own on hold. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the stack of bills on my counter. My arthritis medication, the mortgage payment, the utilities, the grocery money for the month. All of it would have to wait or be juggled if I funded their Italian adventure. I walked through my house that evening, really seeing it for the first time in months. The carpet Marcus had tracked mud across last week, still dirty because he never cleaned up after himself. The kitchen counter where Sophia had spilled nail polish and left it to stain. The guest bathroom Elena had used during their engagement party, where she had somehow managed to clog the toilet and never mentioned it. This wasn't my home anymore. It had become their free hotel, their emergency bank, their convenient solution to every financial problem they created. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about my life. 64 years old, and what did I have to show for it? A son who saw me as an obligation at best, a future daughter-in-law who barely tolerated my existence, and a bank account that had been steadily drained to fund their lifestyle. I thought about my late mother, who had warned me years ago not to spoil Marcus. "You're creating a monster, Janet," she had said. "That boy will never learn to stand on his own feet if you keep carrying him." I had dismissed her words then, believing that love meant sacrifice, that good mothers put their children's needs before their own, always. But as I stared into the darkness of my bedroom, I finally understood what she had been trying to tell me. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I made my coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going to the bank to transfer $24,000, I picked up my phone and made a very different kind of call. By the time Marcus, Sophia, and Elena were boarding their flight to Rome, I had set something in motion that none of them saw coming. I spent that first day in a strange state of calm. While Marcus, Sophia, and Elena were probably settling into their Italian villa, marveling at the Tuscan countryside they thought I was paying for, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing papers that would change everything. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Janet?" Attorney Rebecca Mills asked me, her pen hovering over the documents. "Once we execute these financial protections, there's no going back without significant legal processes." I looked at the stack of papers before me. Authorization to cancel all supplementary credit cards. Removal of Marcus as an authorized user on my accounts. Revocation of his power of attorney that I had stupidly granted him last year when Sophia convinced him I was getting forgetful and needed help managing my finances. "I'm sure," I said firmly. "Do it all." Rebecca nodded and began making the necessary calls. Within 2 hours, every financial lifeline I had unknowingly provided my son for years was severed. The credit cards, the automatic transfers, the joint account access, all of it gone. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. I spent the evening doing something I hadn't done in forever. I cooked a meal just for myself. A small piece of salmon, some asparagus, a glass of wine I had been saving for a special occasion. At 64, I decided that choosing myself was special enough. The next morning started peacefully. I was having my coffee and reading a book. An actual book. Not hurrying through emails or texts from Marcus asking for something. When my phone started buzzing, the first message came at 9:15 a.m. "Mom tried to use the credit card for breakfast and it was declined. Can you call the bank? Probably just a mix-up." I looked at the message and felt nothing. No panic, no guilt, no immediate urge to fix his problem. I took another sip of my coffee and continued reading. 10 minutes later. "Mom, seriously, none of the cards are working. Elena is furious and Sophia is crying. Call me ASAP." Then the floodgates opened. Message after message, each one more frantic than the last. "Mom, where are you? This is not funny anymore. We can't buy food. The hotel wants payment and we can't check out. Call me right now. Mom, Elena is talking about calling the police. She thinks someone stole our identities. Why aren't you answering? We're stranded here. Sophia's dad is going to kill me if he finds out about this. Mom, please. We can't even buy a bottle of water. The villa owner is threatening to kick us out. We need those cards working now. I'm begging you, just call the bank and fix whatever happened. Elena says this is all your fault for being disorganized with your finances. We missed our dinner reservation because we couldn't pay for the taxi. This is humiliating. Mom, 16 hours and you haven't responded to a single message. We're going to have to sleep in the airport if you don't fix this. I can't believe you're doing this to us. What kind of mother abandons her son like this? Sophia is having a panic attack. Her mother is talking about suing you for fraud. 16 messages total. I counted them carefully, saving each one. Evidence of exactly who my son really was when he couldn't get what he wanted. Finally, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail the first time. And the second. By the third call, I was curious enough to answer. Mom. Marcus's voice was shrill, desperate. Thank God. Why haven't you been answering? We're in serious trouble here. Hello, Marcus, I said calmly. How's Italy? How's Italy? His voice cracked with disbelief. Mom, we're stranded. The credit cards aren't working, we can't pay for anything. And Elena is talking about having us all arrested for fraud. You need to call the bank right now and fix this. I took a slow sip of my now cold coffee. There's nothing to fix, Marcus. I canceled the cards. Silence. Complete shock silence. Then Sophia's voice in the background, sharp and panicked. What did she say? You canceled them? Marcus whispered. But why would you do that? We're depending on those cards. That's exactly why I canceled them, I replied. Because you were depending on them without ever asking if I could afford to support your luxury vacation. But Mom, we talked about this. You said you'd go to the bank. I did go to the bank. I went to protect my own financial future instead of funding yours. Elena's voice cut through the phone as she grabbed it from Marcus. Jane, this is completely unacceptable. We have reservations, commitments. You can't just leave us stranded in a foreign country. My name is Janet, I corrected her calmly. And I didn't leave you stranded. You left yourself stranded by assuming someone else would pay for your choices. This is ridiculous. Sophia's voice now high-pitched and hysterical. You're ruining our entire trip. Our pre-wedding celebration. How could you be so selfish? Selfish. The word I had been called my entire adult life whenever I dared to consider my own needs. The word that had kept me smaller, quieter, more compliant. Marcus, I said, ignoring Sophia entirely, put me on speaker. A moment later, his shaky voice confirmed I could be heard by all three of them. I want you all to listen very carefully. I began, my voice steady and clear. For 32 years I have funded Marcus's life. His clothes, his cars, his apartments, his credit cards, his mistakes. I have been his personal bank, his safety net, his solution to every problem he created. Mom, I'm not finished. My voice carried a strength I didn't know I possessed. Not once in 32 years has Marcus asked if I could afford to help him. Not once has he considered that I might have my own dreams, my own needs, my own financial limitations. And now you three have planned an expensive vacation to Italy, and simply informed me that I would be paying for it. Elena's voice was ice cold. We're family. Family helps family. Family, I repeated. When was the last time any of you helped me with anything? When was the last time Marcus mowed my lawn, fixed something in my house, or even called to ask how I was feeling? When was the last time any of you treated me like family instead of a financial institution? The silence stretched on. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You three are going to figure out how to pay for your own vacation and get yourselves home. You're going to learn what it feels like to solve your own problems for once. Marcus's voice was desperate now. But Mom, how are we supposed to get home? We don't have enough money for the flights back. The same way millions of people travel every day, Marcus. With money you earned yourself. But we don't have jobs. Then I suggest you figure that out quickly. And for the first time in 32 years I hung up on my son. For 3 days my phone was mercifully quiet. I allowed myself to believe that maybe Marcus had finally learned something about responsibility, that perhaps they had found a way to handle their situation like adults. I should have known better. On Thursday evening, as I was tending to the small herb garden I had neglected for months while constantly dealing with Marcus's crises, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an international number I didn't recognize. Hello. I answered cautiously. Janet, this is Elena. Her voice was strained, lacking its usual imperious tone. We need to talk. I thought I made my position clear, I replied, continuing to water my basil plants. Please just listen. We're calling from the hotel lobby using their phone because we had to sell our cell phones to pay for another night here. I paused, my watering can suspended in midair. You sold your phones? Yes, and our watches and some jewelry. Janet, we're desperate. We've been living on bread and water for 2 days. Despite everything, I felt a small pang of concern. But I pushed it down, remembering all the times Marcus had manipulated me with sob stories before. Put Marcus on the phone, I said. There was shuffling, whispered conversations, and then my son's voice, smaller and more defeated than I had ever heard it. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about everything. We were wrong to assume you'd pay for the trip without asking properly. Go on, I said, my voice neutral. We've been talking, the three of us, and we realize we've been taking advantage of you. Sophia especially feels terrible about how she's treated you. I heard Sophia in the background, her voice no longer the confident, entitled tone I was used to. Tell her I'm sorry, Marcus. Tell her I never meant to be so rude. For a moment my resolve wavered. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? An acknowledgement of how they had treated me, an apology, some recognition of my sacrifices. Mom, Marcus continued. Elena's husband is going to wire us money for the flights home, but it won't arrive until Monday. We just need help with food and the hotel for a few more days. I promise when we get back, things will be different. There it was. Even in their apology, even in their moment of supposed realization, they were still asking me for money. Let me talk to Elena again, I said. Janet. Elena's voice was back, more careful now. I want to apologize for my part in this. I encouraged Sophia and Marcus to ask you for the money. I thought you could afford it easily. What made you think that? A pause. Well, Marcus always talks about how you have savings, and you live in that big house by yourself, and you don't seem to spend money on anything for yourself, so we assumed. You assumed I was hoarding money instead of living my life? I wouldn't put it that way. How would you put it, Elena? Another pause, longer this time. Sophia told me you were getting older, and probably didn't have much time left to enjoy your money anyway. So it made sense for you to help the young people in the family make memories. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward, nearly dropping the watering can. Sophia said what? Elena seemed to realize she had made a mistake. Perhaps I misunderstood what she meant. Put Sophia on the phone. Now. Janet, I don't think that's a good idea right now. Emotions are running high and... Put her on the phone or I hang up, and you can figure out your own way home. More shuffling, more whispered arguments, and then Sophia's voice, shaky and defensive. Hi, Janet. Elena misunderstood what I said. I never meant anything bad about you. Tell me exactly what you said about my age and my money. I just meant that you're retired and settled, and Marcus and I are just starting our lives together. I thought you'd want to help us create good memories. By suggesting I don't have much time left to enjoy my own money? Silence. Sophia, I want you to be very honest with me right now. What were your plans for after you married Marcus? I don't understand what you mean. I think you do. What were your long-term plans regarding me and my finances? The silence stretched so long I thought the connection had been lost. Finally, Sophia's voice came back. Barely a whisper. Marcus thought. Maybe you'd be happier in a nice retirement community. Somewhere with people your own age, activities, medical care nearby. My blood turned to ice. A retirement home. Not a home. Community. A nice place where you wouldn't have to worry about maintaining that big house or managing your money or... I hung up. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. I walked into my house through the rooms I had lived in for 23 years, the house I had bought with my own hard work, the house where I had raised Marcus as a single mother, the house where I had planned to live out my days surrounded by my books and my garden and my memories. They had been planning to put me away. Not just take my money, but remove me entirely from my own life so they could live it without the inconvenience of my presence. The phone rang again. I ignored it. It rang 6 more times over the next hour. Finally, I picked it up without looking at the caller ID. What? I answered sharply. Mom, please don't hang up. It was Marcus and he was crying. Sophia told me what she said. I swear to you I never agreed to anything like that. I would never put you in a home. But you knew she was thinking about it. She mentioned it once, but I told her you'd never want that. I told her you love your house. When did she mention it, Marcus? A few months ago. But Mom, I swear I didn't take it seriously. I thought she was just stressed about wedding planning and thinking out loud. And you didn't think to tell me that my future daughter-in-law was planning to have me institutionalized? I didn't think she was serious. And I told her it was a bad idea. But you didn't tell her it was wrong. You didn't tell her it was cruel. You just said it was a bad idea. Marcus was sobbing now, full of self-pity and panic. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't abandon us here. Please. I promise things will be different when we get home. Different how, Marcus? I'll get a job. A real job. I'll stop asking you for money. Sophia and I will figure out our own finances. And what about the retirement community idea? Never. I promise never. You can live in your house forever. We'll never bring it up again. I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at my neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who was 87 years old and still living independently in her own home, still tending her roses, still driving her little blue car to the grocery store twice a week. Marcus, I said quietly, do you know what hurts me the most about all of this? What, Mom? It's not the money. It's not even the entitled attitude or the manipulation. It's that you've been discussing my future behind my back. You and Sophia have been making plans for my life without ever asking me what I want. You've been treating me like a problem to be managed instead of a person with my own desires and autonomy. We never meant. Yes, you did mean it. That's exactly what you meant to do. And now you're stranded in Italy because the woman you were planning to discard finally decided to stop funding her own disposal. I hung up again, and this time I turned off the phone entirely. That night I made myself a proper dinner: chicken piccata with lemon and capers, roasted vegetables, a glass of good wine. And I ate it slowly, savoring every bite. I was 64 years old, in good health, with a sharp mind and a comfortable home. I had at least 20 good years ahead of me, and I was finally ready to live them on my own terms. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I made my coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. If Marcus, Sophia, and Elena thought they could plan my future behind my back, it was time for them to discover what it felt like when someone else controlled their destiny. My first call was to my attorney, Rebecca Mills. I need to make some significant changes to my will and estate planning, I told her. How quickly can we get this done? What kind of changes are we talking about, Janet? I want Marcus completely removed as a beneficiary. Everything goes to charity instead. There was a pause. That's certainly you're right, but are you sure this isn't a decision you're making in anger? These kinds of changes can be difficult to undo emotionally, even if they're legally reversible. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. 3 hours later, I was signing new documents. My house, my savings, my life insurance, everything I had worked for. It would now go to the local literacy foundation where I had volunteered years ago, before Marcus's constant financial crises consumed all my free time. The lawyer assured me the changes were ironclad and would take effect immediately. Next, I visited my bank. Maria, who had been my account manager for over a decade, looked concerned as I explained what I needed. Mrs. Henderson, I have to ask, are you sure about closing the savings account that's been linked to Marcus's emergencies? That's almost $30,000. That's exactly why I'm closing it, I replied. I want that money moved into a new account that only I have access to. And I want all automatic transfers to any account associated with Marcus terminated immediately. What about the house insurance and car insurance policies where he's listed as a backup contact? Remove him from everything. I don't want him to have any access to information about my finances or my property. Maria nodded, though she still looked worried. May I ask what prompted all this? I thought about how to explain it simply. I realized that I've been enabling someone to plan my disposal while funding their lifestyle. I've decided to take control of my own life before it's too late. By afternoon, I had contacted Marcus's landlord. Marcus didn't know I knew, but I had been quietly paying his rent for the past 8 months through a direct transfer he thought came from his freelance graphic design work. Work that, as far as I could tell, existed only in his imagination. Mr. Peterson? This is Janet Henderson, Marcus Henderson's mother. I need to inform you that I will no longer be covering his rent payments. The automatic transfer will be canceled as of today. Oh, Mr. Peterson sounded surprised. Marcus told me his business was doing well, and he was handling the payments himself. Marcus has been unemployed for over a year. I've been paying his rent without his knowledge to prevent him from becoming homeless. But that arrangement is ending today. I see. Well, his lease requires 30 days' notice for any payment changes. If he can't cover next month's rent, I'll have to begin eviction proceedings. I understand completely. You should do what's necessary to protect your own interests. That evening, I received a call from Marcus's car dealership. Apparently, he had tried to trade in his current car, the one I was still making payments on, for a newer model, and they had discovered some irregularities with the loan. Mrs. Henderson, I'm calling because your son listed you as a co-signer on his current auto loan, but he's been trying to use the vehicle as collateral for a new loan without your consent. We need to verify whether you're aware of this transaction. I absolutely did not consent to any new loan, and I want to be removed as co-signer on the existing loan immediately. What are my options? The finance manager explained that since I had been making the payments, I could legally take possession of the vehicle. If you want, we can have it repossessed and returned to you, since you're technically the primary financial responsible party. Do it. As I hung up, I felt a strange satisfaction. For 32 years, I had been cleaning up Marcus's messes, preventing him from facing the natural consequences of his choices. Now, for the first time, he would have to deal with reality without his mother's safety net. My phone had been turned off since the previous night, but curiosity finally got the better of me. I powered it back on to find 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Marcus, but several were from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably Elena and Sophia borrowing phones from other hotel guests or using the concierge's phone. The messages told a story of escalating desperation. Mom, we found someone to lend us money for food, but we need to pay them back. Please call. The hotel is threatening to call the police if we don't pay our bill by tomorrow. Elena's husband said he won't wire money unless you guarantee you'll pay him back. Mom, Sophia is having panic attacks. She can't sleep. Please help us. We're going to the American consulate tomorrow to see if they can help us get home. The consulate said they can only help with emergency transportation if we can prove we're completely destitute. We had to show them our bank statements. Mom, they're treating us like criminals here. The hotel staff looks at us like we're con artists. Sophia's parents found out what happened. Her father is flying to Italy to bring them home, but he says he's done with our family forever. Elena is blaming everything on you. She says you're a vindictive old woman who's destroying her daughter's happiness. But the final message was the one that made me smile. Mom, I had to call my old boss and beg for my job back. He said he'll consider it if I can prove I'm responsible enough to show up every day. I'm going to take it. I have to take it. When we get home, things are going to be different. They have to be. I set the phone down and walked through my house, really looking at it with fresh eyes. The living room where Marcus used to play video games for hours while I worked double shifts. The dining room where Sophia had announced that she thought my decorating style was dated, and offered to help me modernize with my own money, of course. The guest room where Elena had stayed during the engagement party weekend, complaining that the mattress wasn't firm enough, and the water pressure in the shower was inadequate. Every room held memories of being taken for granted, of my needs being dismissed, of my home being treated like a free hotel with maid service included. I went to my bedroom and opened the jewelry box where I kept my mother's rings, her pearl necklace, the antique brooch that had been my grandmother's. Marcus didn't even know these existed, had never shown any interest in family heirlooms or sentimental items. When I died, he would have probably sold them at a pawn shop without a second thought. But now these treasures would go to someone who would appreciate their history. The Literacy Foundation had a small museum of donated historical items. My family's jewelry would be preserved and displayed with the respect it deserved. As I prepared for bed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: complete peace of mind. For the first time in 32 years, I went to sleep without worrying about what crisis Marcus might create tomorrow, what bills I might need to pay for him, what manipulation Sophia might attempt. My phone was off, my boundaries were set, and my future was finally my own. But I knew this was just the beginning. Marcus would eventually make it home, probably angry and resentful, expecting everything to go back to normal once he apologized enough. He had no idea that normal no longer existed, and that the woman who had spent 3 decades enabling his helplessness had finally decided to save herself instead. 2 weeks passed before Marcus finally came home. 2 weeks of blissful silence during which I rediscovered what it felt like to live without constant anxiety about someone else's poor choices. I had started taking morning walks again, something I hadn't done in years because I was always too stressed about whatever crisis Marcus might call me about. I rejoined my book club, cleaned out closets that had been neglected for months, and even started planning a small vegetable garden for spring. On a Tuesday afternoon, as I was organizing my recipe collection and actually planning meals I wanted to eat instead of whatever was cheapest, I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I saw a taxi pulling away, and there was Marcus, looking disheveled and exhausted, dragging a single suitcase behind him. I didn't rush to the door. I didn't feel the familiar surge of maternal concern that used to overwhelm me whenever he appeared distressed. Instead, I calmly finished sorting my recipes and waited for him to knock. When he finally did, I opened the door to find a man who looked like he had aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Marcus had lost weight. His usually perfectly styled hair was unkempt, and his clothes looked like he had been sleeping in them. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "Hello, Marcus. How was Italy?" He looked up sharply, probably expecting anger or tears or dramatic confrontation. When he saw my calm expression, he seemed unsure how to respond. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside to let him pass, noting that he didn't have his usual swagger, didn't automatically head for the refrigerator or start talking about what he needed. He stood awkwardly in my entryway like a stranger visiting for the first time. "Where's Sophia?" I asked. "We broke up." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Her father flew to Rome to get her and Elena. He made it very clear that I wasn't welcome on their flight home. I had to work in the hotel kitchen for a week to earn enough money for a ticket back." "You worked in a kitchen?" "Washing dishes, mostly. Some food prep. The manager took pity on us after the American consulate contacted them." He looked around my living room as if he had never seen it before. "Mom, we need to talk." "I'm listening. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. What we did was wrong. What I've been doing for years was wrong." He sat down heavily on my couch, his head in his hands. "I never realized how much I was taking from you until I had to figure out how to survive on my own." I remained standing, my arms crossed. "Go on." "Working in that kitchen, having to ask strangers for help, having to swallow my pride and beg for my job back over an international phone call. Mom, I finally understood what you've been protecting me from my whole adult life." "And what's that?" "Reality. Consequences. The basic adult responsibility of taking care of myself." He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes instead of the calculated manipulation I had grown used to. "I called my old boss from the hotel in Rome. He said he'll take me back, but only part-time to start, and only if I prove I can be reliable. I start Monday." "That's good, Marcus." "I also called Mr. Peterson. He told me you stopped paying my rent. I have 10 days to come up with next month's payment or I'll be evicted." I nodded. "Yes, I know. And the car dealership called the hotel looking for me. They said you had my car repossessed." "It was never your car, Marcus. I was making the payments, so legally it belonged to me." He was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this information. "So I have no car, I'm about to lose my apartment, and I have a part-time job that won't cover my expenses." "That's correct. What am I supposed to do?" The question hung in the air between us. The old Janet would have immediately started problem-solving, offering solutions, opening her checkbook. The new Janet sat down across from him and said something that shocked us both. "I don't know, Marcus. What are you going to do?" He stared at me as if I had spoken a foreign language. "You're not going to help me? What kind of help are you asking for? I need somewhere to stay while I get back on my feet. Maybe you could co-sign for a cheaper apartment, or help with the deposit. And I need transportation to get to work. And after I provide all of that, then what? What do you mean? I mean, what's your plan for becoming self-sufficient? What's your timeline for no longer needing my help? What's different about this situation from all the other times you've promised to change?" Marcus was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally, he said, "I don't know. I guess I always figured you'd just keep helping me until I figured it out." "Until what, Marcus? Until I died? Until I was too old to manage my own finances and you could take over completely?" He winced. Sophia told me what she said to you on the phone. About the retirement community. Mom, I swear I never seriously considered that. But you didn't reject it either. You let your fiancé believe that putting me in a facility was an option you might consider someday. I was stupid. I was scared of losing her, so I didn't argue when she talked about the future. But I never would have actually done it. Marcus, do you know what hurt me most about that conversation? What? It wasn't that Sophia wanted to get rid of me. It was that she felt comfortable saying it to you because she knew you wouldn't defend me. She knew that when it came to choosing between her desires and my dignity, she didn't have to worry about where your loyalty would fall. Marcus started crying then. Not the manipulative tears I had seen so many times before, but the deep, ugly sobs of someone finally understanding the magnitude of their betrayal. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve your help, and I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. But I don't know how to start over. I don't know how to be an adult. You always took care of everything, and I never learned. That's not entirely your fault, I admitted. I enabled your helplessness because it made me feel needed. But that stops now. So you won't help me at all? I considered his question carefully. I'll make you one offer, Marcus. You can stay in my guest room for 30 days. During that time, you'll pay me $200 a week in rent. You'll do your own laundry, buy your own food, and contribute to household chores. You'll also attend financial literacy classes and look for a second job or additional hours at your current job. $200 a week? Mom, I can't afford that on a part-time salary. Then you'll need to find additional income quickly, won't you? But what if I can't make enough money? What if I can't find another job? Then you'll need to consider other options. Maybe ask one of your friends if you can couch surf. Maybe look into low-income housing assistance. Maybe discover the resourcefulness that I never allowed you to develop. Marcus stared at me in disbelief. You'd really let me become homeless? Marcus, I spent 32 years preventing you from experiencing the natural consequences of your choices. Look where that got us. You're 32 years old with no savings, no assets, no job skills, and no sense of personal responsibility. My helping you hasn't helped you at all. So this is punishment? No, this is parenting. Real parenting. The kind I should have done 20 years ago. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve, looking lost and young despite being a grown man. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? Then you fail. And then you figure out how to get back up and try again. That's what adults do, Marcus. That's what I did when your father left us. That's what I did every time I worked overtime to pay for something you needed. That's what I'm doing now by choosing my own well-being over your comfort. Marcus sat quietly for several minutes, and I could see him trying to process this new reality where his mother wasn't going to rescue him from his own mistakes. Finally, he looked up at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before: respect. Okay, he said quietly. 30 days. 200 a week. I'll find a way to make it work. And Marcus. Yeah. If you lie to me, steal from me, or try to manipulate me during those 30 days, you'll be out immediately with no second chances. Do you understand? I understand. As I watched my son carry his single suitcase upstairs to the guest room, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Hope that he might actually grow up. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, enjoying my coffee and reading the newspaper, an actual physical newspaper that I had subscribed to because I could now afford small luxuries, when Marcus knocked on my back door. He had moved out of my guest room after exactly 30 days, having found a tiny studio apartment above a deli, and picked up a second job doing weekend landscaping work. Morning, Mom. I brought you something. He held up a small potted plant, a rosebush with deep red blooms. It's beautiful, Marcus. What's the occasion? It's been 6 months since I got back from Italy. I wanted to mark the anniversary of the day you stopped enabling me and started actually helping me. I smiled and invited him in for coffee. The man sitting across from me was barely recognizable as the entitled, helpless person who had expected me to fund his vacation to Italy. This Marcus had calloused hands from his landscaping job, wore clothes that were clean but clearly purchased at thrift stores, and carried himself with a dignity I had never seen in him before. How are things going? I asked. Hard. Really hard. Last month I had to choose between paying rent and fixing my bike when the chain broke. I chose rent and walked 4 miles to work every day until I could afford the repair. He paused, stirring his coffee. But I fixed it myself. Watched YouTube videos and bought the parts online. It took me 3 tries, but I figured it out. I'm proud of you. Are you? Really? Even though I'm 32 years old and just learning things most people figure out in their 20s. Especially because of that. Takes courage to start over, Marcus. Most people never find that courage. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Marcus said, I've been thinking a lot about Sophia lately. Oh, not missing her exactly, but wondering if she was right about some things. About me being immature, about not being ready for marriage. She was wrong about a lot of things, especially about you, but she wasn't wrong about me not being a real adult. And how do you feel about that now? Grateful, actually. If you hadn't cut me off when you did, I would have married her and spent the rest of my life being supported by someone else. First you, then her family. I never would have learned that I'm actually capable of taking care of myself. I felt a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. What changed for you? That first week in the hotel kitchen in Rome, washing dishes for 12 hours a day just to earn enough for food. The humiliation of having to ask the manager to advance me money for a phone card so I could call my old boss. Having to swallow my pride and admit that I had been living a lie for years. He met my eyes directly. But mostly it was coming home and seeing that you had finally chosen yourself. That you had finally stopped sacrificing your well-being for mine. I should have done it years earlier. Maybe. But you did it when you were ready, and that's what matters. Marcus finished his coffee and stood to leave. I have to get to work. I'm doing a complete garden renovation for this elderly couple in Brookside. But before I go, I want you to know something. What's that? I still don't have much money. I'm still learning how to budget and save and plan for the future. But for the first time in my life, I sleep well at night because I'm not lying to myself or anyone else about who I am or what I can afford. And that's a gift you gave me, even if it didn't feel like a gift at the time. After he left, I walked through my house, thinking about how much had changed. The constant tension that used to permeate every room was gone. I no longer jumped every time the phone rang. No longer felt that knot of anxiety in my stomach wondering what crisis I would be expected to solve next. I had used some of the money I no longer spent on Marcus's emergencies to take a ceramics class at the community center. My clumsy bowls and crooked vases lined my kitchen windowsill. Imperfect but mine. I had also joined a hiking group for women over 50. Something I never would have had time or energy for when my life revolved around managing Marcus's chaos. That afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call from Elena, Sophia's mother. Janet, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from Marcus. Hello, Elena. How are you? I'm calling because I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. Her voice was different, smaller. Less confident than the woman who had once dismissed me as Jane and expected me to fund her daughter's Italian adventure. I'm listening. Sophia and Marcus's breakup was very difficult for our family. Not because we cared about Marcus specifically, but because Sophia had to confront some hard truths about herself. About how she treated people, especially you. How is Sophia doing? She's in therapy. Dealing with some issues about entitlement and manipulation that go back to her childhood. Her father and I realize we spoiled her. But we also enabled her to become someone who uses people. Elena paused. She wanted me to tell you that she's ashamed of how she treated you. And that she understands now why you did what you did. I appreciate that. I also wanted you to know that watching Marcus work so hard to turn his life around has been humbling for our family. Sophia's father said something the other day. He said that Marcus has shown more character in 6 months than our daughter has shown in 28 years. After Elena hung up, I sat in my garden, thinking about the strange turns life can take. A year ago, I had been a woman slowly disappearing into the background of her own life, existing primarily to fund other people's dreams while abandoning her own. Now, at 64, I was finally learning what it felt like to live authentically. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old friend Dorothy, who had been gently trying to maintain our friendship despite my constant cancellations due to Marcus-related emergencies. Janet, what a wonderful surprise. How are you? I'm good, Dorothy. Really good. And I was wondering if you'd like to plan that trip to New England we talked about years ago. The one we never took because I always had some family crisis to deal with. Are you serious? You can actually commit to travel plans now. I can commit to a lot of things now. I'm finally free. As I hung up and started researching fall foliage tours in Vermont, I thought about the woman I had been just 7 months earlier. The woman who had stood in her kitchen, washing dishes her grown son had left behind, listening to 3 adults casually plan to use her money for their pleasure trip while excluding her from their lives. That woman had felt trapped, taken for granted, slowly erasing herself to accommodate everyone else's needs. She had been disappearing one sacrifice at a time, one unpaid bill at a time, one manipulative guilt trip at a time. But sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is to stop enabling their worst impulses. Sometimes the most loving act is to step back and allow natural consequences to teach the lessons that your protection has prevented them from learning. I looked around my kitchen at my imperfect ceramic bowls, at the potted rosebush Marcus had brought me, at the travel brochure spread across my table. For the first time in 32 years, I was living my own life instead of funding someone else's. The woman who had been slowly disappearing had finally found her way back to herself, and she was magnificent.